Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you guys stopping by very much. So I have the round 9 from the Grand Chess Tour, Superbet Romania. And so we do have a Constantin Lupulescu versus Wesley matchup here. As always, for my people in the Philippines, Maguindanao, Maga Kamusta na, Mabuhay Ingat Lagi, Amasal Tayo, Masaya Koma Kitty King Muli, Maraming Salamat Po, Sa Nanunuod, Ing a King my video and a King my channel. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Mabuting pagbati to you. For everybody who is coming from Romania, I will say, let me see what it was. Bună dimineața. And mulțumesc, I believe that's what it is. Yes, mulțumesc. I'm gonna be working on making sure I say that absolutely correctly. I'm gonna get back to Google and check that out. But if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. All right, so we got D4, knight comes to F6. Got C4, E6, knight comes to C3, bishop to B4. Then we have queen to C2. So we have the Nimzo-Indian defense, and it's a classical variation of that defense. So we see castles by black. We see A3. We got bishop takes C3, and now we have queen takes C3. And we're not too much worried about the knight coming here. You know, you can move the queen somewhere, even back down to C2. Just give a little counter attack on the knight. So it's not too bad of a deal. But we don't see that. We see D5 on the board. So we got knight coming to F3. And that, I mean, as you guys are familiar with my channel, you guys should be looking at the position. It looks very similar to other positions that you've seen. And so that is one of the things about the game of chess. You know, when you have these players that are at such a high level, you know, their understanding of positions is very, very high. So, you know, it's kind of like the more you see, the more you'll know. That's pretty much what it comes down to. So whenever you have positions that are similar to other positions you've seen, you know, you kind of understand a little bit of what to do type deal. So it makes playing the game a little easier. So we see pawn takes C4. We got queen takes C4. We got B6. Bishop comes to G5. We see bishop down to A6. And this is a very common attacking theme. You know, whenever you do push B6. Because, I mean, a lot of the times you do go bishop to B7. But, you know, there are sometimes, excuse me, sometimes that you'll go bishop to A6. And, I mean, it's very, you know, important in this particular position because you are getting a nice, juicy tempo on this queen. So, you know, anytime you can place a tempo on the queen, you know, your move will not be wasted. So we see the queen coming to A4. Now, I will say, I mean, it is a little bit kind of iffy for the queen to have moved as many times as she did out of the opening. And you guys can see that, you know, white still kind of has some issues as far as getting castled and stuff like that. So it's not ideal to be moving your queen 3 or 4 times in the opening. So we see H6, bishop down to H4. We got C5 because, you know, black is castled. They are almost all the way fully developed. So, I mean, you know, the king is in the center of the board for white. So let's go ahead and try to get the position as open as possible. You know, that's always a good idea when your opponent hasn't castled yet. Pawn takes C5. We see pawn takes C5. Then we got rook to D1. So you have kind of given a little bit with your structure as black. But, you know, like I said, you are pretty much fully developed. You know, you have a little bit less problems than white does. So we see queen down to B6. And this is a multi-purposeful move. I mean, you're attacking this pawn down here, but you're also defending your bishop. So you do have the ability to develop your knight now. Probably to C6. Bishop takes on F6. We see pawn takes F6. We got E3. And this is allowing a kind of an interesting trade. Bishop takes F1. We got king takes F1. You can also take with a rook. But, I mean, you know, you're pretty much going to be looking at the same deal as far as your king not being castled. And you are going to have to try to do something to get, you know, your pieces in some harmony. So we do see knight to C6 in this position. It was possible to actually take on B2 and just grab you, you know, like a nice little pawn. But you are going to be looking at H4. And as you guys can see, you know, this rook lift is going to be, you know, coming. And, you know, the queen is going to be kind of coming over here. So there's going to kind of be a lot of pieces hanging out, you know, on the king side of the board. So that might be a little something you have to worry about for black. So we did see knight coming to C6. We got G3 trying to create, you know, a little pocket that your king can hide in. We got queen back to B7, you know, noticing that there might be a little bit of some issues on this diagonal. So why not put the queen on B7 and prepare some type of discovery? We got king over to G2. We got knight over to E5, and then we have queen to F4. And we do see the novelty of the game, which is king to G7. We back up. In this position in 2018, there was actually a game that featured knight takes F3, and then queen took F3, and then we saw queen taking B2. But like I said, we do see king to G7, so that is the first time this has been played. And we do have an interesting idea from white, and it's something that I've mentioned before in videos. I think there was like a video like yesterday I mentioned it on, you know, the disconnecting of pieces. You know, a lot of the times when you have a position, you know, you have a direct line that either defends a piece, you know, it defends a piece, or it just allows for the piece to be safe. There are certain disconnecting moves that you can make to try to disconnect the protection of another piece. In this particular position, E4 is one of those disconnecting moves. As you guys can see, if we back up, you know, there is an attack going right here. You know, the queen and the knight are both kind of trained on that square. So not only with E4 are you breaking the pin, you're also disconnecting, you know, the threats and stuff like that on this diagonal. So you do have the ability now to move the knight, and you're really threatening to win a pawn, you know, also with check. So, you know, that's pretty dangerous. So black has to do something about that. So we do see knight taking F3, queen taking F3, and then now we see queen taking B2. And, you know, we have this point where, you know, we got a rook on the 7th, which, you know, you have 2 rooks on the back rank of your own position. So the rook on the 7 doesn't have that much bite to it. So we see rook F to D8, just challenging the position of the rook. And pretty much if you just continue to move the rook, black is just going to continue to move their rooks. So they're just always going to challenge your rook on that 7. So, I mean, you don't really have the freedom of just kind of resting on the 7. So we got rook H to D1. Rook takes D7, rook takes D7. And then we have reached a point in the game after rook takes D7. If you want to go ahead and pause the video and see what black can actually play, there's a move that was played in the game, but then there was also another like interesting move with a specific idea behind it. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video, like I said, and figure out, you know, what is a really strong, you know, a nice move for black, go ahead and do so real quick. All right, cool. So for those of you who would be like thinking from the black perspective, and you notice that this rook on the 7th is undefended, it should give you the move queen to B5. Now, in the game, we actually saw queen to E5, and that's a very logical move as well, because you're just trying to defend this pawn. You're just trying to bring a piece over to try to give your king a little bit more comfort, because as you guys can see, I mean, you got this rook right here, you got the queen possibly coming in and stuff like that. You know, the black king isn't super comfortable, so, you know, the queen move just, you know, centralizes it and, you know, gets it into a position where it can just do a little bit of defense. But queen to B5 was really interesting. It gives black maybe a little bit more than queen to E5, but nothing like where it's like decisive. But the concept is just very simple. It's just very fundamental into the game. This is an undefended piece that white has, and you can place an attack on it and, you know, basically use your tempo to, you know, do something, you know, useful. You are going to see this queen coming into G4 to check the king. So you're going to be moving back to F8, but you do have that issue with your rook being on D7. So you're going to need to move it. Rook comes to C7, and then you see a further attack on queen to B6. And like I said, this isn't like something decisive for black, but it is giving black a nice initiative in the position. So it's something interesting that could have been played. Just running through some moves, we would see queen to F4 to, you know, protect the rook, but then also to place an attack on the pawn. The king would come to E8. Queen would take on H6. We'd see queen taking C7, but then we'd be getting our rook back after queen to H8 check. King would come down to D7. Queen would take on A8, and you are going to see a pawn race in this position. And as crazy as it looks in the position, I mean, this is fairly equal for each side. You got C4, H4, C3, H5, C2, H6, C1 equals queens, and then you have H7. And that pawn is going to be promoting on this square. So you're pretty much going to get down into a king and a queen and some pawns versus a king and a queen versus some pawns. So as you guys can tell, it is fairly equal. But to be in this position right here, after 24 moves, you are going to have to be calculating 10 moves deep to basically see that pawn race occur. So, you know, it can be probably very challenging for somebody to have to try to do over the board. So, you know, it was definitely a very interesting variation that could have come up on the board. But like I said, we did see queen to e5, just centralizing. We got queen to g4 with check. King comes to f8. We see queen down to e2. The only little issue with queen to e2 is, you know, after f5, you know, the queen is undefended on that square. So, you know, white is kind of putting their pieces on, you know, squares where they're undefended. So we got rook over to b8. We see rook taking a7. And then, like I said, we do see f5. And so now the queen on e2 kind of has an issue. Because, you know, of course, you can't just capture here because you're just going to be losing your queen for free. So the queen comes to h5. You know, why not threaten checkmate? I always say, if you have the ability to threaten checkmate, usually it's beneficial because your opponent has to respond to that threat. So we got queen taking e4, but they have their own check move. We see f3, rook down to b2 with check. The king comes to h3, and then we do see black recognizing that there is a perpetual in the position, and we see rook takes h2. And there's two different variations. I'll show you the one from the game, and then I'll show you an alternate variation. They both end up becoming a draw. King takes on h2. We see queen to e2 with check. King down to g1. Queen to e1 with check. King to g2. Queen to e2 with check. King to g1. Queen to e1 with check. King to g2. Queen to e2 with check. And king down to g1. And this is the position that we see in the game, and it is drawn by threefold repetition. Now, if we went back to queen to e2 with check, you do have the ability to come up to h3. You're not going to get mated, but it's just going to be a different draw. You're going to see queen coming down to f1 with check, king coming down to h2, queen to f2, king to h3, queen to f1 with check. Basically the same thing, because after queen to h3, whenever the queen does check on f1, you absolutely do not have the ability to come here because you're going to be looking at mate on h1. So that's going to be all she wrote with that, because as you can see, this move is taken away and the king doesn't have the ability to come down. You're kind of trapped with your own pawns. So you basically have two ways to draw, or you have one way to lose. And I mean, I'm not a genius, but I'm going to choose the draws. I'm not going to choose the loss. So we're not going to do that. So that was that game. And you know, it's pretty interesting, you know, game. And I mean, it would have been kind of interesting to see queen to b5, you know, to see if maybe that could have been something. Because, I mean, all you have to do is miscalculate as white, and now you're losing the game. So, you know, I think that was maybe, you know, maybe something that could have, you know, got played. But, you know, it would have ended up being a draw like this. But, you know, you never know. But anyway, for all my people in the Philippines, trying to do these different languages for you guys, I'm doing a lot better than I was at first, but it's still going to take me some time. So, maayong buntag. And I'm already spacing on the second one. Maya na agahan. Nainbeg na bigat. Masentos ya kabasan. Marhe na aga. Buenos dias. Maayong aga. Mapia na uma. Kapian kapu no dios. Mayap a abak. Maya na aga. Mapia agay. Mapia kapapita. My big bukala. And then there was, how do you say those? I think that's Mapia, some other ones. Maraja na buntag, Maria Mainat, Mapia na aga, and Kasanyangan si LB. And as of course, you know, salam and assalamu alaikum to anybody else. If there's any French, merci. But that is that. Appreciate everybody stopping by very much. I will see. I think I'm a little bit busy later on. I'm going to see if I can maybe squeeze another game in. But as you guys probably are aware, the entire round was draws. So there's not much to really show. So I think I might just go ahead and take, you know, another game from next tournament. Hopefully there's a decisive game. I am a little bit, you know, like I would like to show a game other than a draw. I mean, I'm even, as much as I don't want Wesley So to lose, I would rather there be like a loss for Wesley So that I can show, or just an exciting up and down roller coaster draw. But I will be posting the standings here coming up in a minute. So I will see y'all next time. All right.